Look at that. Making mistakes, right? George is going to be looking on and not happy tonight. This is already going so well.
So you're
But hi,
fine, mate.
everyone.
This is why
I
I
literally
did
am
Wonders of the
getting
Force.
fired. Hey,
Yeah,
never
This
mind.
is why
But
I
hey,
hosted Wonders of the Force. You sat there in the back. This is what I started everything. It's fine. Take two.
well,
Three.
honestly, let's not tell the lies. This is like take 3 now. Hi
Yes.
everyone, as we're going to start now, welcome to Cinema Savvy. It's myself, Dave. I am taking the reins badly from George tonight. I am joined by Phill and by Sam, and we're obviously going to talk the Mandalorian episode, chapter 24, The Return, directed by Rick Famuyiwa. Obviously, he did the penultimate episode as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do what we always do, go through all the talking points that we have for this episode. We're going to look to you as well. We want you in the comments if you thought this was a good episode, if you thought this was a bad episode. Really, if anybody was looking to this to see, is this the way I want the finale to go? And really would want your comments to tell us everything that you thought that went on with this episode. For me, it was that I had some ups with it. I have some downs with it. There's some overriding thoughts on how they finished it, but we'll get into that a lot later into the show. As I say, I'm joined by Sam and Phill. I wasn't here for last week's episode, so that went quite smoothly. So what we will do is I'm going to stop talking and hide my head in shame. Please, guys, before running into the finale, tell me what were your thoughts kind of heading into it?
Oh, you're doing great, Dave. Don't worry. It's all good. But no, I was hopeful, optimistic going into this finale. I did say I was a little bit nervous for the Mandalorians at the end of the last episode, but I really think the break that we had between watching this at Celebration and between today really helped me kind of like go, well, do you know what? The story that they're telling is going to end on a more positive note, at least at the end of this season anyway. And so, although the episode was shorter than I would have liked, I think overall I had a good time, and I was lucky to see both episodes 7 and 8 in the cinema this morning,
nice.
Which was made everything completely different. And I think getting to watch them back to back really helped as well. I don't know whether I would have enjoyed the experience of 8 as much if I didn't just watch 7, because it definitely feels like they should be one. So it definitely ended on a high for me this season than earlier in the season anyway.
Yeah, I agree. We of course we watched that at Celebration, which feels like forever ago now. That was 11 days ago. It's been a long time to make it, obviously, getting to this point in the season. And yeah, as we were saying earlier, I was nervous at 38 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay, how are they going to wrap it up? And then, actually, to be fair, we'll get into it probably later. It could have been shorter than 38 minutes, in all honesty. But it was, I had a lot of hope going into it. I actually was hoping for more of a downer than an upper in terms of an ending, purely because of where they're at in the story, what we're thinking is going to come, everything else. Like, was more not from it wanting to be a bad episode, more a point of I wanted a bit more peril out of it, because actually I felt that it tells a better story per se, and especially considering where the characters are going to end up eventually. But that was my thoughts going into the episode. Then, of course, watching the episode, actually it changed throughout. And actually, I'm quite happy with how this is all wrapped up for a season finale. We'll get onto that later on, obviously. But no, I was a little nervous going into it. I enjoyed the break, and then, I'm looking forward to discussing all the ins and outs of what has been probably the best season of Mando so far.
Okay, interesting. I mean, Sam, I'd seen you on Twitter and Instagram today that you were going to watch the finale at the cinema this morning. I didn't realize you'd actually watched both episodes as well today. Was it set as one long show? Was it set as sort of a movie sort of thing, or did you still get the break in episodes? Sorry, I was just...
No, it was just episode by episode. So okay. I mean, although I would have loved if they'd have done an edit, I think that the ending of episode 7 is so good as is. I think you kind of need at least that minute or two break to just kind of take that in, because it's still kind of massive. Those last few minutes of episode 7 are probably one of the best parts of The Mandalorian as a whole. So you kind of really need to kind of, especially because I've not actually watched it since the initial viewing that I had. It was kind of good to, even though I feel like I've seen that clip now so many times just because it was shared everywhere in the end. But no, it was a great experience, even though there was, I had to wake up so early this morning to see it, and there was kind of only 4 rows worth of people for an entire screen. So I was a little bit kind of surprised actually that firstly, there was not so many people there, but it was one of those things where it's not openly available on cinema websites or anything. But yeah, it was just interesting, and before anyone thinks anything, there was nothing additional. There was no either additional scenes or trailers or anything. I thought, could there be anything in this? But there wasn't. Like, it was just exactly end credits, and then that was it. So I mean, it was good. And obviously, I've spoken with George before, and maybe others as well, about wouldn't it be great to see these TV shows on the cinema screen? I would happily go and do that and go to the cinema to watch them, because I do think with the way that they're put together nowadays, it sells so much. And I think especially the fight scenes and the battles that we get, and especially the intense scenes, I was really on edge for a couple of times during this episode.
Yeah.
Because I really felt, oh no, actually, what is going to happen? And although, like Phill was saying, like, I mean, I expected more peril, and I expected, more casualties, in which there was none really of this episode, that of any of the good guys anyway. But no, it was fab, and I really wish they would be more openly available, because I think so many people would actually go and see shows like The Mandalorian on the big screen.
I think it's definitely a case in point. I was just interested with obviously the two shows, because obviously we did literally pick this episode up from the second that we left episode from chapter 23. Literally, there was no time between anything. We're just straight back into the action, which is why I thought it might have been maybe cut together, so you just saw that as a continuous. But obviously, we went straight into following Din Djarin and his escort through the caves, or the base, as we found it was in the last episode. And obviously, we got the first battle scene of Din escaping, and also having Grogu come to his rescue. Obviously, it was a nice starting point. I thought it was great to get sort of back. We followed Bo-Katan for very much a lot of the previous, so I think it was nice to this felt very much like a Din-centric episode, although there was still the other stories going on. We kind of really got back to Din Djarin and Grogu for this majority. A lot of, for me, New Hope feels of the wandering around the base, like them hiding around the corners and watching for troopers walking by. So yeah, your thoughts on sort of our opening and catching back up with Din and his capture?
I mean, it was absolutely necessary to just go straight back into it. I think everyone at the end of episode of chapter 23 was like, we need the next one now. So it was great to pick it back up, and I think I do love that we just see so much of Din during this, because as much as we've seen him and Grogu, I do feel like because the story has been so much focused on the Mandalorians as a whole, that has been less time with them, and especially the duo relationship of those two characters as well. So it was nice to actually get some time with them, and to actually just see like the fighting and the combat, because it was so good. I think the choreography in this episode as a whole was just absolutely fantastic, and there was so much movement from like, well, I'd say beginning to end. I think the end it does slow down significantly, but right through this, it's just action packed from the get go, and I absolutely loved it. And you're right. I mean, I didn't really truly think about A New Hope, but now that you've said it, like, I think it does make sense. And having R5 come and be BR2, put like droid for this, and to just see, like, I can't even remember. I feel like I'm gonna get crucified for this, but the little droids
the mouse
droids. But no, but just seeing like how the mouse droids are used, and just for comedic effect, and even the comedy with R5, I just thought everything was just so. It was just so nice to have that in this very intense part of an episode. And of course, Bo-Katan's going through with the Mandalorians. You've got those in space trying to avoid the ties. So it's just, I just love that we just went back into it, and I appreciated the action a hell of a lot.
So you guys say A New Hope. I get that, but I also get a little bit of Bespin as well from Empire, from the very much R2 doing his thing with R5 doing his thing, with just that round the corner aspect, where of course you have Luke trying to find Leia, Han, Chewie, and of course it's a trap and all the rest of it. So for me, it was a kind of a mix of the two. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you, but also then adding Empire into it as well, because it kind of there's a bit of element of both. But what that kind of gives then is the utmost respect to the fact it feels Star Wars, and which is what it should do at the end of the day. This is a Star Wars show. It needs to have that aspect to it. I didn't like the police lights on top of the mouse droids. I thought that was a bit stupid. The entire scene was fantastic. I was like, the lights are a bit unnecessary. Like that's I get it, but at the same time, like that kind of didn't need to happen. But I love watching R5 fly around and R5 actually being used properly for a little blown motivator to full-on hero of Mandalore. Like I love it. I love the transition there. I think it's a really cool little. You didn't have to do that, but I'm so glad they did. It was really cool. So yeah, no, I definitely get a New Hope vibes, but I get Empire vibes from it as well. And just going around the base and having Grogu come in to save Din feels very appropriate to the entire ethos of the show so far, especially considering the payoff at the end of the episode. We'll get to that when we get to it, but just it felt right, but also didn't feel overdone. Grogu was only just about able to step in. It didn't feel the thing with the Force, as much as I am the biggest Jedi fan on the planet, you can overdo it. It can be a crutch. It can be here, save everything by doing this one thing, where it isn't. Grogu struggles, but he gets involved and does what he needs to. And Mecha Grogu went from what was quite funny in the first part of this to actually, it was necessary. It was a very good use. It wasn't overdone. It wasn't a comedy. They got the comedy out of it in the first part where it needed to be, but they actually had a payoff for it as well, which is testament not only to Rick Famuyiwa as the director on this, but also Filoni and Favreau for writing and how they've gone about telling that side of it. So 100%, I love that whole part of it, and also with Bo-Katan as well. And when she sends Axe off to the fleet, she's trying to go, look, I've got to look after this lot here. You go save the fleet. We have got things to do. This is not a good situation. And it is so well done. And also, the thing I like about it actually is when you have R5 using the port, it is so reminiscent of those original films. It's so reminiscent of just art. It really captures in one tiny little element just Star Wars in a nutshell, especially when you have R5 who's trying to bumble his way through. The same way as R2 was bumbling his way through. That's why I had Bespin in my head. When he goes, well, I don't care about the hyperdrive. Where the hell is this going on? Then later on, of course, it's well, why didn't you tell us about the hyperdrive? Of course you knew about this. I love how they've done it. So I think it's a very big homage. And then you get into what is kind of the really interesting meat of the episode, which is Gideon, his clones, and kind of what goes on from there. So, Dave, you want to take us to the next bit?
Yeah, I just want to kind of add on that as well. I love that we got Mandalorians who brought lots of fuel for their jetpacks this episode and didn't just run out as they did when chasing the big lizard birds. I loved R5 getting to use his blasters, which obviously was it R2's had died after 25 years usage was the story I think at the time. No, they only worked for so long and they stopped. So I must have refitted those when they fixed them. So they were
That's Pelly. That's Pelly doing that. She's fixed the motivator, recharged the boosters. It's all good.
I loved it. I loved seeing R5 getting that. You're right, that feeling when you saw him plugged into the wall was just such a blast to the original trilogy. Just harkened me right back to watching A New Hope. And like you say, like the Bespin scene. Now you've said that, of course, when he's on the computer, you know better to trust strange computers. Was wonderful, yeah. But yeah, you're right. I think we will move to sort of the next sort of big stage that we got, and it was the Gideon clones, which we've seen these clones in these tanks for a while. We've seen them since season 1. Was it season 1? We got the first look of the something in a tank. And this time we got them in really clear water, so you could see it was Moff Gideon as soon as they walked in the room, and not the blurry, shadowy faces that have been hidden pretty well every time we've seen these tanks. To then see that obviously what Gideon was doing, so he's wanting to build, like you said, he wanted to build the best army he could, and the best thing about the armor he was giving is that he would be inside it. Obviously that then led to all these clones being him, although he's dismissed his interest in building clones. That's exactly what he wanted to do, and as we find out shortly after that, the one thing he wanted to add to that and why Grogu was taken he wanted to have the Force, the one thing he'd never had. I thought was a really interesting take. I loved that moment of Grogu looking into the glass, and you knew he was going to open his eyes. You knew there was going to be a beat in a moment for the music for him to open his eyes, and to just do away with those clones very quickly. To kind of, they were there, they're a point. This is what he's been building to, and they're all dead. So it was a very quick sort of getting rid of those, but a really important point of the story is exactly what they've been harvesting all this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially like in the last season, I think people were very much, it's to do with Snoke. I mean, I think there'd been like words, around that in season 1, but definitely season 2. It was all this is what's leading up to the First Order and all of that, which I still believe it is anyway. This is definitely one of the a stepping stone towards that. But it does. I said in last week's episode video about Gideon and how much I enjoy disliking him, because he's just so evil, and I love it. Like the way he talks about himself is delicious, because
he Giancarlo Esposito just being his absolute best.
Yeah. He's
like,
just
almost
so
pantomime villain level. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He is acting for the back of the room. Like he is absolutely giving it everything. And Gideon is just so up his own arse. He loves himself so much. He's like, I get to wear this. The reason why this is even better is because I'm in it. And the only thing that could make me better is the Force, which not many people have. So, that's not my fault, but I'm gonna get it anyway. So the idea that this is, I mean, we'll go on to it later about kind of like his ending, or well, could it be his ending? We don't know totally. The clones could have survived maybe, but it was just kind of interesting and kind of like an moment when you did see that the clones were him, and I just knew there would be a jump scare. I was like, and it still scared me anyway, but. I just think it was an interesting angle to do it, and I'm glad that bit's resolved. I do feel like what this episode did is kind of close off some things a little bit anyway, just because I do think there's some things that have lasted over these 3 seasons where I think it's time to like wrap them up. So I'm glad that we got some answers for that specific plot point, because it has been going on since the first season.
Yeah, I mean, it's setting everything up for Heir to the Empire. Like, we know, we have a very good idea at least of what's to come. But we're going to get onto that later. But no, seeing the clones especially was cool, because they were talking about in the Shadow Council Project Necromancer, which is still, that's the Emperor. That is the whole point behind it. It's still the Emperor. And of course, when you have Hux talking to him, it's like, well, cloning was your obsession, not mine. It's, again, one of the reasons why the Empire was always doomed to fail, is because it's the same reason why any dictatorship, any government of any type really has trouble, because people do it for the best interests of the people, but in reality, they're doing it for the best interests of themselves. So, yes, of course, Gideon was going to share the technology he got once he had his own army of himself in, Force-using clone badassness. That's what he wanted. So he had his end goal alongside the greater good of the Empire. And it's kind of, it really wraps up, really nicely his arc. And yeah, agreed. You knew the eyes were going to open, but what I like though is you don't clock it at first because of obviously the murky water. So you kind of go, are they? No, it's him. Oh, it's him. And they are actually alive at this point. And to save face, obviously, what happens with the Emperor later on, where, of course, the failed clones up until getting 2 Snokes actually get a successful Force clone, because, well, I was nearly there. I'd isolated it. And he was so close. And that's the whole point of the Empire. They were so close in building the Death Star. They were so close to getting the weapon ready, but they couldn't without Galen Erso. So they had to go and drag him out and kidnap him. So he dragged his heels. He put a failsafe in. We got the end of the first Death Star. It's the failure of the Empire, the failure of the First Order, the failure of all evil is the best interest of the individual outweigh the best interest of the group. And it always, always fails. But if you're going to do it, you've got to work at it. They're not easy fixes. So it's a really nice teed up way to go, here is what Gideon was building to. And when Grogu clocked it, you could see, we've come so far in animatronics and puppetry throughout the years, animation, everything, you could read in the emotion in his face of, so this is what they wanted me for. I don't like this. It was pretty much the, because we forget, yes, he is essentially a toddler, but he's still seen a lot in 50 years. He's not stupid. He's a very intelligent creature. He actually, for his age, is quite advanced. So he sees, he understands. He may not be able to communicate it properly, but his way of communication is go, cool, destroy, just go. And it was done in his way, and it had to be done. But I liked, we finally knew what Gideon was up to, and they had to end it, and they did, but in a really cool way. So yeah, I absolutely loved how they set it up. And that's after Grogu's only barely dragged in out of it, and Din's struggling. You've got the Empire sending off, of course, TIEs and bombers and all the rest of it. It's all going on around him, yet still had to make sure that once this was done, it was done.
And I think it's really well said. I think that to the point of knowing how close we are getting to the creation of Snoke, that we now have someone who has literally got the Force into the clone, so made Force ready clones, which is what the Empire, and certainly what's probably building for Project Necromancer, wanting that to be ready. So we're just getting these little feeds in all of these shows that are going to start just edging us towards what we've got in that sequel trilogy. Just everything's in place that if you are someone who watches everything of this, like, you know, all these stories, when it gets to Palpatine somehow returning, you'll be able to see, well, yeah, I've seen this through Bad Batch, I've seen this through Mandalorian, I've seen probably something in Ahsoka that's going to lead us down a path where by the time those shows finish, and maybe in the movie that Filoni's doing, it will have very much weaved that movie into maybe the start of the sequel trilogy, where maybe even Palpatine has returned already, or we'll get Exegol, something that will hint at what is to come.
Something to save face a little bit on episode 9, yes.
Absolutely. It needs it. It does need it. And I think that's why it's so clever that I think maybe the plan that they had at the very beginning, or at least when planning the Mandalorian, I'm going to presume has shifted at least a little bit so that we can lead to this place that we're going to. And with all the announcements that we've had, we had all these other announcements pre-pandemic, or when it started, about what shows and films are coming out, and now a lot of them are, although we've got a lot of different eras and stuff happening, which is fantastic. We're getting a lot of stuff concentrated in this time, which is important, because of the reception to the sequel trilogy and the last film specifically, which I think is universally, well, I say universally, there's people who enjoy it, I'm sure, but I think a lot of people are agreed that that's probably the weakest one for many reasons. So to get these plot points, as small as they are, is probably not as important as they will be later on. It's just so important to build this world and keep it going. As large as the Star Wars Galaxy universe is, there's so much that we need to know about that will help just fill in the blanks and make things just be a bit more believable, especially as we expand more and more, and we're getting so much on our screens, which is fantastic. And we just want to make sure that we can enjoy it. Of course, you don't need to have all the information. Some people will be fine without it. But I think, especially for us, we would love to see even more. And, I know Phil's mentioned Heir to the Empire in last week's episode, and I know there's going to be more today. So, it's just getting those things and leading into Ahsoka, which I know is going to have a lot more too. It's just a very great time. I think it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. And I know I saw something last week about, Star Wars is dying, which I feel like comes about all the time, doesn't it? But I just feel like it's absolutely crazy to be even saying that.
Yeah, I've had that discussion and seen that argument so many places, and I've had to put it down so many times because, I've had people tell me it's. I've had people tell me that I'm wrong for liking what I like, and go, no, I'm quite happy and quite entitled to like what I like, and quite entitled to enjoy it all. It's the same thing when it comes down to. I use the High Republic as a good example for this. It's not for everybody. I haven't pushed it on Dave or George or yourself, Sam, or Robin, or anyone else like that. If they want to read the books or comics, whatever, I encourage it because I really, really love it. But everyone came out of watching the Acolyte trailer going, holy crap, this is awesome. Go see, I told you. But I'm not going to force it. I've been enjoying it a lot. I've completely deep dive. I'm halfway through the latest book, Cataclysm. I've got to finish that, and I want the next one, Quest for Planet X, next. I've got it all teed up because that's what I enjoy. But there are so many stories in Star Wars, and it's expanding in so many areas. And what I love about The Mandalorian versus The High Republic is a very good example. The Mandalorian is your samurai warrior, Mandalorian style. It is, you have warriors in armor, you have a bit of Viking there with the songs, the rest of it. You've got a lot of cultural tropes that aren't appropriated. They're just woven into a complete story. The Jedi is all about the Force. It's the monastic way of living. It's more the Buddhism style of teaching. I enjoy both for different reasons, and this all has tied up so nicely. And as I said, we're kind of keying up now for Ahsoka. We're keying up there to the Empire and Thrawn and everything else. There's so much to come. We're going to get on to the end of the episode specifically as to why I think certain bits are here, because I actually felt The Return was a really misleading title. I was disappointed because of the title. Like, I was hoping for something different. I was hoping for a certain shade to appear in this episode somewhere, and it didn't. But that's not the point. No, crackling done so far. But yes, we've kind of waxed circle on that, and I think it's time to move on to probably
you talked about warriors. I mean, we'll segue with that into sort of the Mandalorians versus the troopers, which I think was very much a background thing, and literally in some scenes it was the background, what was going on behind. Like, points out, oh, there's somebody flying around in a rocket. So I mean, it was built obviously from where we were, that they built it. Obviously, you can't get through the atmosphere. You've got no technology you can reach out between. So obviously, got to the ship, got all the Mandalorians to literally zip through the clouds down to go help and join down the fight. And just as the last ship popped through, all the TIE fighters came through the other way, never crashing in the middle. They just came out that way. And obviously, just for that, to kind of start to destroy that one ship that they left as, like they said, they left as a decoy that was there solely so the TIEs would keep on trying to destroy that rather than looking elsewhere and joining the fight on the ground, because they just would overpower everybody. And I thought it was a really nice take on the captain going down with the ship, to be in there. He was sat in the chair, taking out some TIE fighters, but mainly, I don't know if at that point he'd already decided he was going to use the ship as a weapon the way he did, but certainly him just being there waiting for it and trying to take out and just letting them blast away at him. I thought we might lose him at some point. I thought he might, like, the ship might go in space and he would go with that, like he's going down. He was the captain obviously before Bo-Katan came back, and it was his ship and he would go down. But I really liked that they brought us up. I thought the battle looked incredible. I thought seeing the TIE interceptors again and the bombers, absolutely incredible. I loved just the way they dropped from their hangars like bats and out. I thought it was a really, really nice way to see it. And obviously we then got the battles between the troopers and the Mandalorians, which I'm interested to see the gallery for this series, because at no point did I think that's on the stagecrafts, and I don't know if they've taken elements. I don't know. It's weird that this. I'm trying to see how this. You see these things. How the sausage is made. We've all watched a load of behind the scenes. But I'm like, I wonder if that is that any of that is that CG? Is that the actors in there? I thought it was very well done, and I love the just coming together of the two sets and just battling through that. The armorer just absolutely cracking through those guys with just the hammers was something to behold.
Well, I mean, I think definitely in this episode, and I think in this season, really, there's been much larger set pieces for this show than we've been used to, and I think you can definitely tell, how you can understand how things have been filmed a bit more. But with this, I love again how expansive everything is. I mean, you get these large scale attacks. Of course, I also thought Axe was gonna go as well. I did think it would have been okay. Well, we had Paz last episode. It'll be Axe this episode. It's like an even balance, But I think as someone who's not seen all of Clone Wars, but has seen enough, who's seen kind of like the first 2.5 seasons and has seen the very last few episodes of it, I have a good understanding at least of kind of of Mandalore, how it was, and some of the battles and stuff. So to see that in live action, see at least some of that in live action was really amazing. And I think there was some absolutely beautiful shots to me of that whole part of the story. And to see them all come together in flight and kind of the armor next to Bo, and then just I just thought I got such joy out of it. And I think that's what I love about Star Wars, is when it gives me that feeling. And the fact that we went from kind of a battle and you've got all that going on, and then you get the calmness of them finding, plant life and kind of that natural environment on this kind of war-torn planet, I thought was really nice touch. And again, it provides, hope for what the future of Mandalore could be. And I think that's when I really thought, okay, we are going to get a good ending here. So to go from that to then have this absolute just flying straight into each other, the armor just like cracking skulls, probably literally. And then I know it's later on, but then you see them all in the background in flights. And I just think it was so excellent. I'm so glad that we managed to see the Mandalorians kind of, at least in live action in any way, kind of in their prime, getting each other, really fighting for their world, fighting to get this back. And it's just, I just thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when you have the underbelly showing, you have Axe going through the clouds, just before that, you have the payoff to what was the worst episode. Well, I still stand by what I said. I hate that episode with a passion, but that moment, the ending, where you have Axe basically go, I don't care if you beat me, you're still not the ruler, to then actually going, yep, whatever you say, Lady Kreese, I'm on it. That's the influence of the Darksaber. That is the very much, I am the ruler here, you will do as I say, and I will, and in return they go, we will respect this because you have earned it. It's actually paying off. It's actually, she's proven to them that she is worthy of leading them, saber or not. She has given everything to them and for them, and learned a lot of her lessons, and you can see it paying off. So I properly actually teared up. I was almost bawling when you have Bo take out the Darksaber, the armor crack back with the hammer and tongs, going, oh, you think I'm a spy, do you? No. Let me prove everyone wrong on this. I was like, okay, all right, maybe I was wrong in that particular theory, but just then to see them go at it and to see that's what Mandalorian's supposed to do. It's that they are supposed to be badass, do not much, and just hit things. It worked. It worked really well. And it was just cool to see. I was a little disappointed that Axe didn't die with the ship. I will be honest, but that's because I thought very much as captain going down with the ship, he's earned his, in a way of the more Norse element, he's earned his place in Valhalla kind of, his song is ending here moment. He got out of it. I'm like, oh, okay. He could have died. But that's more of just a disappointment of case of I agreed with Sam actually, where you had Paz died last week. I thought it would have been a perfect balance. One from one half, one from the other, showing that Mandalore is united in bereavement. We are all giving everything for Mandalore. So I thought that would have been a cool payoff. However, that's me being slightly nitpicky. I'm not entirely I'm not disappointed with it. It's just a case of okay, it could have gone this way. It didn't. Don't care. The fact that he then went, hang on a second, Bo, get everyone out. I've got a plan. It was a case of oh shit, this is gonna go down, is it? Okay, this is how this ends. I like it, Max. This is perfect. But yeah, I have to agree. I love it. So I'm glad you brought it up, Sam. Going in and finding the tranquil nature, finding life. I didn't realize. I didn't think Mandalore could sustain it. I was like, no, I just needed room to grow. So pure, so innocent in the field of battle. And of course, one of the worst moments in human history of the First World War is that after the guns went silent, you could hear birds. Nature reclaimed very, very quickly. And if you go to Flanders Fields or the Somme or anything these days, you can still see the landscape still pockmarked. Humans devastated. But life came back because nature finds a way. And it's the same thing here. It's beautifully well done. And I really enjoyed it. And of course, when you go back to it, looking at the Clone Wars, you said you see a sprawling city. You don't see the rest of Mandalore itself. And don't forget, Mandalore is more of a system than it is just a planet. You've got so much to it. And to have that bit of life, again, it was keying up the good ending, as it were. But it was a calm during what was the fight for Mandalore, and it was really cool. And what I love though is before that, when you literally have Moff just going, the purge of Mandalore is going to be complete. In last week's episode, he was very defiant and very much, I have you now, moment. To which Bo and the armor or whatever went, yeah, nah, mate, nah, not today. And it was a kind of, you have my axe kind of moment. It was really cool, and I absolutely loved it. And then going back to that though, funny enough, talking about A New Hope and Empire and Return of the Jedi, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, I don't care if you're a small Star Wars fan or a huge Star Wars fan, you hear a TIE engine, you smile, because that howl is just so distinctive. It's the same thing if you're a historian at all, if you are into military history and you listen watch documentaries when it comes to the Battle of Britain, a Lancaster or a Spitfire Merlin engine anywhere. That supercharged V12 is so distinctive. It's that same thing here. You hear that noise, you go, I know what it is. And it's just, it's a big old nostalgia kick without having to be nostalgic, because this isn't the actual ships themselves aren't a nostalgia trip, but the actual noise it harks back to it. It's one of what makes Star Wars so great. It's one of the reasons why I play X-Wing, is because I love the ships. So it was really cool to see. And then to have, of course, when you have then the troopers versus Mandos, and it's Mandalorians versus fake Mandalorians, I'm wondering if part of those are Clan Saxon. Going back to Rebels, where you have Gar Saxon, Tibar Saxon, you have the Imperial Super Commandos, which are your first Imperial Mandos. I'm wondering if they are not descended by blood anyway, but if that's kind of the lineage for those troopers. That's the next step. Either way, it was really cool to see. And then, of course, go, cool. Real Mandalorians meet fake Mandalorians. I think you know how this is going to end. And it was just really well done.
It really was. I mean, the battle itself was intense. It gave you all the right beats of that battle. You saw majority of anybody who was being thrown out the sky, kicked out the sky, were absolutely these new troopers. I still, all the way through, thought the armor was going to turn. I've thought it all the way through. That's just been perfectly suspicious. And I was literally waiting for her moment to do something where I was like, so it was a pleasant surprise that she didn't, that she was just the armorer, and there was no reason to be suspicious of her. She was
I couldn't agree more.
behind.
I was actually happy that it was just a suspicion. She actually turns out to be who you want her to be in the beginning, just someone who cares. And she actually goes from, oh, no, Bo-Katan, you're, come on, she's a traitor. She betrayed Mandalore too. No, Lady Kryze, we are following you. You actually have proven to me that you're worthy of leading us. It was a proper payoff. So then, I was really pleasantly surprised as well.
And if we're going to talk sort of the troopers, the new troopers that we've had against Mandalorians, we did get the scene of a Mandalorian taking down all those troopers through the red gates, so reminiscent of Naboo. I thought the scene was perfectly played for how Mandalorian just could pretty much get through by picking up weapons as he went through each one of those gates, grabbing first a knife, and then he got through the next one and he got the staff and then a shield as well, and then he had the shield and a blaster. And I just thought it was really well played into kind of him also do that, fighting that fight and showing that yes, they might have this Beskar armor, but they're no match to someone who has been fully trained as a Mandalorian. And it felt to me that maybe why they maybe weren't actual Mandalorians inside the army, because of how easily dispatched they were by Din. No matter what training he's had, it was always more on him than they were. So it was a numbers game, but I thought it was a really nice way for him to build up and don't have a weapon. I've got a weapon. I've got two weapons. I've got a better weapon. Let's get in to see, to get to Gideon. So I thought it was a really, just that whole way. And I say the reminiscence of those red gates being opened was just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was not an inspiration, but for some reason, all I could think of, wow, this is like kind of giving me Raven, Way of the Warrior vibes, like the TV show. Like I was just like, oh yeah, now he's picking up this, and now he's got a nut, and I was just like, what's going on here? But I mean, I think that whole setup was great, and again, it gave R5 something more to do. That he was kind of the one kind of like opening up these gates for Din. And yeah, I also love that he just kept adapting every single time. It was like, right, I'm going to use this and I'm going to use that, and they weren't the easiest to take out. Like they did get some hits in on him, but of course he's our lead. He's not going to get taken out by some random troopers, and he knocks them all down, and it was just great. I mean, it was another kind of a little bit intense, and I didn't know if Grogu was going to do anything at that point. But again, it was good to see, Din do something. And it makes it sound like he's not done anything this entire time, which he has done, but it was just so good to have a focus just on him without being surrounded by other Mandalorians. Like, at the end of the day, he is the one that we're following, the one that I want to see what happens with him. So it was good to just see that he could still kick some ass.
Yeah, the show's called The Mandalorian, not Mandalorians or Mandalore.
Yeah.
It felt so video game-esque. Like, it felt like a level from like Jedi Fallen Order or something like that. It's very much here is your barriers, here's like the next boss kind of thing. It's boss level stuff. It's cheesy to a point. I am here for it every day of the week. What I love though against R5 is like it's a very reminiscent of R2 on episode 4, the trash compactor. It's like, no, shut them all down. It's like, no, like, come on, next gate. Come on, R5, come on. And by the end of it, though, you have all this smoke build up, and you have these troopers looking at you like, we're a bit screwed. And then the final gate comes. I was like, yeah. But again, he goes back to season 1, where he has those pistols, those blasters that actually do cut through Beskar. They are Mandalorian weapons. They are designed to, annoyingly, take out other Mandalorians, because Mandalorians do what they do best, to fight each other, not everyone else. That's why Mandalore was never a huge threat to everybody, because they Civil War, feudal system. Who knows? History. It's all great. But it was fantastic to see. But yeah, it was that very much video game-esque of, cool, beat level 1, next. Here's level 2, next. The fact, though, he wanted the weapon, then he got kicked down the shaft. He's like, oh, come on. I just wanted that part, and now you're gone. He then nicks, of course, one of the jetpacks as well. Like, cool, my one isn't here for... Actually, I don't know why he hasn't got his jetpack. It's gone somewhere. So cool, fine. I'm just going to nick someone else's. It's just like, I like that, though. We've all done that in games. Like, cool, loot. This is mine. I have this now. And it's just... It's so well... It's cheesy to a point. I loved it. I was here for it. I'm just like, yes, just cheering on. It's just... At that point, I'm just Grogu. It's like, yes, 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 yes. It's just, yep. I'm here for it, and I absolutely loved it. But also, it's very much gearing you up for what's to come. You know what's coming. You know what the final boss is. Well, to a point, because then we get the Praetorian Guards. And, those were awesome. Again, this is what Star Wars boils down to at the end of the day. Yes, you can have all the flashy lightsabers in the world, but no matter who's wielding what, a damn good fight still a damn good fight scene with real peril. And that's what was really cool. It was just genuine. Because I must admit, although the show's called The Mandalorian, we know season 4 is being written and all the rest of it. It's like, hang on a second. Is he actually going to get there? Is season 4 not going to be following Mando? Is he? I genuinely thought, felt peril for a second. Like, which is when I can attest to Rick Famuyiwa and, of course, Favreau Filoni. This is how well it's been done. The Triple F here has absolutely nailed it. Like, this is just how it is. They have got us absolute perfection. So, yeah, absolutely loved it.
I mean, let's never use Triple F again. But other than that...
hey, it's a brewery down near where I live, actually, funny enough. Triple F Brewery. So I'm kind of giving them a compliment here for damn good ales. Like, they make a damn good TV show as well.
Episodes, yeah. I think you're right with the actual... I love how once they started this battle with Gideon and the troopers, and the best way they kind of do it is they started as that main battle, and then they gave us that jeopardy by splitting Grogu into a separate room with Praetorian Guards. Like, okay, what's going to happen inside that room?
No.
Yeah, no, pressing that button. And it was just that moment of like Din trying to get to that room and Gideon pulling him back, overpowering him so easily as well in that the mechanical suit that he has around him. That's given him obviously much more strength than he would normally have to where he was really laying into the Mandalorian, like into Din Djarin, where we thought, he really could do with some help here. And obviously we then went into also Grogu being taken out of his IG suit to being a circle runner around the top of a room, which is lovely and it's cute. And I know I love that it's a puppet. I love that it is. Sometimes when he walks, it makes me laugh because he waddles really funny. I can't help that. That's just the way I feel about him. He's still amazingly cute, and I love it. And his action in this episode was one of my favorite things since the Mudhorn attack in the first series. But yeah, I still thought that him just running around the ceiling was kind of like, oh, look at him go. But yeah, I thought it was really nice to kind of separate them out. They're having two separate fights, and for Mandalorian to be like, I need to try and get to him, and obviously saved by Bo-Katan because he was in real trouble before she showed up.
I mean, Phill was right about the whole video game aspect. You do kind of go, it is like, oh, you're heading towards the location where it is going to be final boss, and it's, I did get Fallen Order vibes. I think when when they're on the crashed Republic cruiser, and you have that first fight, and it's just like, oh my god. So I totally felt that, and then to have Gideon just be Gideon, taking Din out, and it's like, oh, okay, but then Praetorians come and it's like crap, and you do kind of get that sense of dread, like, oh no, something bad is actually going to happen. But firstly, I mean, Grogu parkour, I adore. And I could have watched him go around all day. Like, it was so, and then the Praetorian's just like, oh no, we missed him. Oh no, there's three of us and only one of him. Oh, he's going around in a circle. Where is he going to go? Like, it was just, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I was a bit like, I mean, maybe, come on, guys, come on, try a little bit harder here. So, I mean, that was all good. That was still good, but I was like, right, come on, you need to, like, do something about this now. And then to have Bo come down, and you know that she is like, I've let you go, like, a few times before now. This is it. I'm not going until you are dead. And of course, you have these two things going on, simultaneously. And then to have kind of the destruction of the Darksaber, I think, is so important. And I'm actually so glad that they did it. Again, because I've not had much kind of backstory with the Darksaber itself, I'm less like, oh my god, it's the Darksaber. I don't know if, having had so much knowledge about it, I would feel differently about it. But for me, I'm like, okay, it's just, at this point, it's a MacGuffin. Let's just like get rid of it. So when it happened, I was like, oh, right, okay. And I think it had done what it needed to do. It brought these people together, and Bo's at this point where she feels like a leader anyway. She's done right by these people. She's still doing right, and this is going to hopefully be a victory for everyone. So I'm glad that had ended. But yeah, I'm also glad that we actually got to see, Grogu do a little bit more, and, have the help of Din to take out the Praetorian Guards, who were a challenge, of course. And we know that they took out Paz with ease. We know that Rey and Kylo Ren took them out with relative ease in The Last Jedi. So it's kind of like, what is kind of a youngling and a Mandalorian going to be able to do? And luckily they managed to take them out. But I was worried. I was really worried that something could happen, because you never know. The title of the show is Mandalorian, and as much as we followed Din, replace him with another Mandalorian. I could just follow Bo for the rest of it, which I know would not happen. But in my mind, I'm like, they could do that. They could completely do that out of left field. But no, overall, I loved that. And then again, you still have the battle going on in the background. Axe's, ships coming down. It's all extreme at this point.
Yeah. So as much as I love it all, it does then bring into it one of my major gripes for the episode. How naff the whole, when you had Grogu on the floor and you have the bits fall on top of him, it was done so poorly. It was so dainty. When they literally thought, if you watch it, it's literally just, there's no emphasis with noise, there's no build up, it doesn't sell it very well. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of, it just took me out of it for a second. Like, it was just literally, if you watch it, unfortunately, if you go back, you're not going to be able to unsee it. It's so daintily done. It's like, I get it. That's how it should have been done in terms of they had the right idea. It was just poorly executed. It's similar when Vader has an entire ship brought down on him, and he's just standing there bringing out with the Force and Rebels. That's how it's supposed to look. That's how it's done coolly. This was just very. It just was. The idea was there. I just felt it could have been done a little better. And just in terms of it just looked very dainty. It looked kind of.
How much those puppets cost?
Yeah, I'm aware. You know, the budget of the show is just Grogu. Everything else is kind of just like a TV screen behind him. But I mean, tell me I'm wrong that way. But it was the only thing. I was like, oh, okay, that could be done better. But the actual idea was perfect. Everything was done well. And then when you have Mando versus Gideon, and Gideon is so full of himself and so sure of himself. He's like, you might be doing okay. You might be doing well, even. I'll give you that. But come on. Come on. You're no match for me. And he's just, it's very Gus Fring, very Giancarlo Esposito, him doing what he does well, which is, I am the most badass MF here. Like, you put him against Sam Jackson, either one of them's just like, yes, they are just the most badass in the room. And he just stands there going, I will take you on. He goes, look at all the improvements I've made. You are so easy to beat. And it takes two of them to take him down. And even that, they don't win the fight. That's how well it's done, though. They don't win. They are about to be beaten when they are saved by Axe. And it is very well done. It's a case of, that's when a villain has done well. You don't beat him. He gets beaten because of everything. It's a very much, one doesn't happen without the other. And it takes the entire group effort to be able to do it. And that's how well it's done. And when you have the Praetorian Guards, again, they get taken down. But yeah, although they're not taken, I disagree slightly. They're not taken down with relative ease. They're taken down, but you have to be taken down by the most skilled people to be able to do it. Rey and Kylo struggle with half of it. It takes the pair of them to do it. It took both Grogu, Din, and Bo to be able to take the Praetorian Guards down and take Moff down. It's done really, really well to the point of this is pure peril, and I love it. And then, yeah, Moff Gideon isn't beaten by them. He's beaten because he gets absolutely nuked to hell and back by a ship crashing down. And that's the only way they could kill him, because I think anything else would have been a disservice. They would have done him dirty. I think that is the perfect way to do it. They can't beat him. He is just too good. And it takes literally bringing an entire ship down on his head to be able to do it. And even then he's like, oh, come on, I've come so far, and now I'm dead.
It was a crazy moment. That you're right, he had Din beat. He had Bo-Katan beaten. She was then till Din turned back up and started hell. But there was no way he was still way in advance of where they were. At some point, it would have taken its toll. I think he would have defeated them both quite easily. I think if he'd been in a straight up fight, we saw how good Bo-Katan was with the Darksaber and her fighting skills, and she could get nowhere near him, and all he had was the staff, and she couldn't even defeat that. He was really powerful against her. I love the ship coming down, that counting clock of like, this is coming down and it's going to hit this at some point. So you've got that timer, or is ticking in the back of your mind, this ship's coming. And I thought it was a really good way to kind of see out his story, to really like, he's got to the level he wanted to be. The only thing he's missing that he wanted was the one thing that's going to save the people who he is about to defeat. The one thing he really wanted to get into himself that he'd given to these clones. And that ship, when it blew up behind him and the fire's falling everywhere, for him to just disappear into that ball of flame, that no matter how good his Beskar armor is, that stuff melted at that point. I can't see, I think that's his definite end. I can't see that they'll bring him back again. I think that is the end of him. And then to get that lovely moment where you have a room filled with fire, filled with destruction, to then look around and see Grogu holding out his hands and the fire just dispersing around them, full safety, nothing coming close to them. And Bo-Katan turns and looks like to see what happened, and there he is. Just, I love that shot when it pulled back from the fire. You could just see the curve of where the force was being used to deflect the fire around them. I thought it was a really wonderful moment to get us from where you first met Grogu and the mission the Mandalorian's taking him on to then get this moment of him using that force to look after his now will very much shortly be actual, but for now his family that he's been with for so long. I just thought it was a really good way to get rid of a villain and to then show how far Grogu has come from the child who was first found on the first episode.
Yeah, with the ship, it wasn't another happy landing. It was definitely it was a bad landing. But I mean, I have to say, I wasn't. I can't say I was disappointed because I wasn't with Gideon's ending specifically. But in my mind, I had. Well, first, I thought with everything that happened in the beginning of chapter 23, I was in my mind thinking, well, he has signed his own death sentence here that they're either Thrawn or he's going to be, or they're going to go after him instead. He wants to betray what the Empire's doing. They're going to snitch, and then he's going to be killed by his own people, which for me would have been kind of the number one way to do it, because it would have been like, oh, you thought you were in power? Well, actually, these people are also either on your level or above you, and you've been taken down a peg or quite several pegs. So that was kind of what I wanted out of kind of his death. But also during the fight, I was kind of like, it would make sense for me if he had been killed by the Darksaber, and then at least if the ship then did crash as well, both the Darksaber and Gideon would be taken out. Like, oh, you couldn't get the Darksaber out. I don't know, something like that, which I kind of thought would have been a nice way to end that, because he wanted it so badly, and that was kind of one of the roots of why Mandalore fell. Anyway, is that he wanted that, and that was part of the agreement with Bo. But I mean, in any case, I liked what they did anyway. I thought it was, you want what I love and hate about these two episodes is that you see the Empire's influence on Mandalore, and so to have the base be taken out at the same time as this ship as well, I thought was really good, and to have him going to fire, I did enjoy it as well. So even though it wasn't how I kind of expected it to go, I was satisfied by that. And I do hope it is the end, because as much as I absolutely love him, I feel like there's not much more you can get out of his story now. I feel like it is kind of played out, and I really want to see where they go next and how things lead up to the bigger plan and to larger villains. So I am happy with that. And then with the actual flames and stuff, I just thought it was real. I think there's so many beautiful shots in these two episodes, and I think the flames. There's two things that it reminded me of. Number one, red-haired woman surrounded by something. All I could think of was X2. Was Jean Grey in the water. That was what I could see in that, because that was one of the major films that I saw as a child in the cinema. I was like, oh my god, that was the vibes that I got. And then also, and I know Phil's gonna say this, but I got Kanan like vibes with what he's doing like in Rebels, and I've not even seen Rebels, but I know that scene because I couldn't avoid it when it came out. But I was like, whoa, it's absolutely amazing. And what I love about the Force is, for me, it's so much more of a natural thing, and that's why when it's so heavy-handedly talked about and used, that's when I kind of get a bit annoyed by it, because it's not just a weapon or something that you can just take out. It's very much, the balance of everything and kind of this natural thing. And I feel like for Grogu in that moment, that's a natural reflex that he needs to do that. It's not, oh, I'm going to stop this by putting a shield around us. It's just very much, oh, I want to protect these people.
Yeah.
And that just happens to do that. And it just, the music and the visuals, I just thought it was so amazing, and kind of a great way to cap off this massive battle that really started, at the end of the last episode.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, because again, this is a slight gripe because it's Filoni doing the exact same thing again. But this time round, it's gone from, it's just different enough though to work. It's gone from a sacrifice to save everyone to, this is the only way I can save everyone. Everyone lives, everyone's happy. But I did, and this is where I thought actually they might kill off Grogu, because going back to that first episode, by the time he's the first season, when he's using the Force, he passes out when he uses it against the Mudhorn. Like he's not used to using it. Now he's tapping back into it. He's been encouraged, he's been taught by Luke, he's gone back to his way when he was at the temple. So he's become stronger with the Force. So I get it. But at the same time, I thought they might use it as a sacrifice. But again, kind of glad they didn't, because it was very Kanan vibes. But again, I welled up at it because Kanan, because I'm very attached to that character. I'm very attached to the way he sadly perishes. And it was Filoni doing the same thing again. So it's like, okay, could have been done slightly differently, but at the same time, it's perfect how it's done, because it killed off. It was different this way because this time when the fire was not incidental. It wasn't it was used to take out the characters. It was the characters taking out the villain, and that was a happenstance because of it. So it was different enough that I'm okay with it, but also I was like, Filoni, really? Like, again? But like, stop pulling my heartstrings like this. Stop using fire and the Force to be able to just make me feel things. This isn't fair. You make me hurt all over again. I've only just rewatched Rebels. So, like, no, I didn't need to have another season 4 moment. Just go away. But no, it was really well done, and it was the perfect. And what I love though is when Gideon realizes, he just screams like, "I have come so close, and my clones are dead. This is how I'm gonna die." And it's like, boom. However, it needs to be done because the next step is Ahsoka, is as the Empire, it's Thrawn. And you have to be able to have that next step up. And that's where the threat's going to become in season 4, team up to the movie and everything. It's the, God damn it, we thought we'd taken out the end game. No. The end game's only just beginning. It's that level. It's how all good storytellers are done. If you look at, compare it to Rebels, for example, season 1 is a Grand Inquisitor, season 2 is Vader, season 3 and 4 is Thrawn. And it's done in a very much, you are facing the next level up. And it's Maul coming into it, it's everyone else coming into it. And with this, that same thing of, oh, you think you're done? No, we're just getting started. And it's how each, it's a overused trope, but it's also the best trope in the world for this, because if you take the real world, for example, if you're in a place where unfortunately the authority figures abuse their powers, well, you have to go past the local enforcement first, okay, then it's the local government, and then it's the head government, and then it's head of it all. There's always another rung. It's the way of the world, it's the way of the universe. You know, humanity can be felled by a pug that you can't even see with your own eyes, but it's always that next level up, and what's next? It's the next level, and it's used, and it's used well. And what I love though, even if it didn't kill him, even if it just exhausted him, you just see Grogu sit down. It very harks back to season 1. It's very much oh yeah, he is just a kid. He's just a stupidly powerful kid that is able to do this. But he protects his dad. He protects his family. And you have Bo, who had the shield up, but she was prepared to die. She was more worried about protecting Grogu and Din than she was herself. And that's what a true leader becomes. And I do wonder if the Darksaber's not entirely destroyed. I reckon they might give it to Grogu. I reckon he might reforge it. That's kind of my way of thinking there. You know, the Darksaber originally was forged by the first Mandalorian Jedi, Tar Vizsla. Well, you now have a new leader on the throne of Mandalore, but she's not Force sensitive. She doesn't need that as a symbol to rule. They know her already. She might get her own version of it. The Mythosaur, you see that lovely tie-in at the end. We'll get to that in just a second. So I reckon it might get reforged. All right, I don't think we've seen the end of the Darksaber, but we've seen the end of Gideon, and I am glad for it in a way. I'm sad in others because I thought he's been so fantastically played. And when we saw Giancarlo Esposito at Celebration, you could tell his passion for it. And of course, I was at the front, and he did walk past us at the very end, and the absolute smile on his face was so genuine. When someone shouted "Long live the Empire," he shouted back, and you could see it in his face of like, "I am in Star Wars. I'm doing something cool." Like, and he's poured that passion into this role because, unlike his other ones, where he is very passionate, he's very into it, he plays his characters very well. You can see by the end of this, by the time he dies, he's like, "Oh, really? I just got to this point," and that's what I love about it. And yeah, it was a fantastic way to kill him off.
It really was. I think he's been an excellent villain for the first 3 seasons, to just be in and out, not to be our big bad every week. So he's not always being defeated. He's always built up to these big big final scenes where he's just missed out on each time when he's trying to do something. So it's been a really good. And I mean, we kind of lead into that into sort of our endings. Really, we start to get the really nothing is bad. There's no slips in this at all. So we're going to start really with, I mean, the ending for Mandalore. We get the relighting of the Forge, the Great Forge back on Mandalore, where you see all of the Mandalorian clans both together, both with helmets, some without, together as one actual group of people again, rather than these separate people who don't want to be around each other. And I thought it was really nice. And obviously we get I guess it's quite simply a baptism again, really. We get Tarth Vizslar's, not Tarth, Paz Vizslar's kid getting, where he was kidnapped the first time, they didn't get to do it, finally getting to say the creed, getting the water dropped on his head from the waters of Mandalore, which was a really nice touch. And it was nice to see that all those people together, all the Mandalorians together, supporting one another, all being there for this next generation being brought into the Mandalorians. And that obviously led us as well into the moment with Grogu and Din, which was wonderful for him to be turned away at first, to say he's no longer, he's my apprentice now. He's not just a foundling anymore. And that moment where he's like, well, what about if it was his parents? And for him to say, right, I'll adopt. And that was when the bait and switch of what I felt about the armorer, where she paused. And as soon as he said, I'll adopt him, he'll be mine, this is going to be my son, that the way she said to him, this is the way, like, this is what you need to do a long time ago before we got here. This is what you should have done. I thought it was beautiful. I really loved the moment of him finally taking Grogu from that egg that he found at the start of episode 1 to now make him his actual son. Was a wonderful character arc, and we'll talk about how it's in a minute of how it's almost tied up their story. But for me, yeah, I thought the whole Mandalorian section of this ending was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I've not got too much to add. I think it's just really nice to see, you know, factions come together and actually do things in a healthy way. Again, if I'm going to link it to anything, I mean, I got Lion King 2 Simba's Pride vibes at the end. You know, they all come together at the end. But it's then nice to go back to you know, those scenes earlier. It makes the scenes, you know, there by the water not make more sense, because I think they were fine as they were, but it's nice to have that call back and to actually, you know, finish what we started, and then having it lead to this, you know, adoption moments. And, you know, you're right, the armor with, you know, not much hesitation was just said, this is the way. And for her then to say, you know, Din Grogu was just, I feel like this viewing at the cinema was not a very kind of wild one, not like, you know, at Celebration, which was a bit too much for me. But I know at that moment there was a few like like moments. It's like, oh my god, like, because it is so heartwarming. And I think after kind of, you know, how season 2 ended, which it wasn't like a really bad ending, but it was really heartbreaking with what happened with this separation, so that now have them, although they've already come together, this is the proper coming together of these two people, these as fans, and you know, and I think in show, like, it's been said, oh yeah, well, Din's his dad, you know, whatever, that's all been said, but for it to actually be an official thing, and not for it to just be official, but to have it being said and done on Mandalore is just the most important thing about it. And I think it wraps up the Mandalore section of this very nicely, but it also kickstarts kind of the next steps of Din and Grogu's journey together.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is where I have a tiny little, not gripe per se. I just thought it could have been Grogu Jaren rather than Din Grogu, just because of Boba Fett, Jango Fett kind of thing. It's just more of a naming thing, but that's kind of, I think that's more of me looking at it kind of okay, this is how they're naming it rather than the other way around, but more of a, I love the fact either way around. I was fucking happy with it. I was ecstatic. This is how it should have been done. And again, Emily Swallow was just 4 words. Whatever it is, this is the way. Like, done. Whether it's just so well said and so well. And I agree. It's, as you're saying, Dave, it's very much the way it's said and how it's said, and like, no shit, you should have done this a long time ago. Like, okay, I'm glad you've got here, but it took you a while, didn't it? But at the same time, though, she's always been that influence of, you must do what is right, but you've got to find it on your own way. You have gone and done this. You've brought a foundling in. Okay, he is your charge. It's up to you how he gets trained, but you've got to take him back to who he belongs to in terms of the Jedi. And when he gets and comes back, so okay, yeah, you took him. He decided to come back with you. Okay, you have done the right thing, but now you are a clan of 2. And it is very much the linear progression. So I was very happy with how that ended. And then, of course, so funny enough, actually, my brain got triggered in a hilarious way, talking about Paz Vizsla's kid. Of course, he's got, which I think is very much akin to the early 2000s
Hasbro helmets.
Hasbro helmets, yeah. Which then hark back. What I loved in this episode, you do literally have Mando vision, which is just the T-bar. Just him getting dragged along. You just have T-bar. Like, yes, this is perfect. I love it. But yeah, that is really, really cool. And it ties up Paz Vizsla's arc. And I reckon you're going to see Bo and the Armor and people take Paz under their wings. Go, okay, look, your dad's song was amazing. It got written. He defended you, and then he joined. He was a great warrior, and his song is completed. You are now taking the next step in that song, and it's really cool without saying too many words. And then that moment, though, where it is very much, it is Din Grogu. No matter what its name was, I teared up at the same time. Like, this is just, yep. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And then, again, to have the Great Forge relit, to have Bo, to have the Night Owls, to have the Covert, have everybody there with the same applause, the same feeling, the same energy of a Mandalore united. This is what we've wanted for years, and it was done so well.
Really was. It really was an excellent end. And we moved on from that, where I'm just going to group this all together. Obviously, Mando is told that he needs to take Grogu on adventures, basically, to get off Mandalore, and the same way he was raised, to take him on adventures, teach him the ways. And the first thing he does, he's off to the New Republic, to see the Dave Filoni cameo, which takes me out of it every time we see him. It's just so prominent on screen, like, oh, there's Dave.
I wanted us to see Zeb again, and we didn't, and it made me sad.
So yeah, it was just nice. And obviously they picked up the IG head to then rebuild IG-11 to take him back to Navarro, so they've now got their sheriff as well. And that was kind of, then we got our final shot, the shot of Mando in his cabin with Grogu picking up frogs. That awful iris out, that looked a bit cartoony to me. That was the one thing I really disliked, that came in and circled over him. Just a tiny, tiny gripe. It's the only thing I can pick out of this as a flaw. But this is where I have not an issue so much, but for me, this perfectly, from the first episode of Mandalorian to the end of this chapter, wrapped the whole thing up in a tight, tiny bow that was perfect. Like, for me, this felt far more like a series finale than a season finale. I know he's seen the New Republic, and he's going to now say, look, we want to have adventures, like an adventure of the week sort of thing. I'll be a gun for hire when you want me to be. But for me, if this had been the last episode, I think they wrapped it up so nicely. The whole story arc of all the characters, I'm going to find it quite difficult to move on from that, to see how they're going to jump in to start the story up again for me.
I do agree to a point. I mean, it feels like if this show was just kind of on network television and it got cancelled at this point, it'd be like, well, fine. Well, you know what? It's not like it was in the middle of something. If it was the end of season 2 and it got cancelled, you'd be like, what? You can't do that. Whereas here, it's like, okay, it feels like this is a relevant conclusion. But for me, it's more of a conclusion of this arc, this 1 to 3 season arc, which I think the Mandalore stuff has kind of has become more prominent in season 3. But that was all being set up anyway prior to that. So I think the ending I did like that it was a happy ending. I like that we had Din talking about going back to not full on bounty hunter, but helping out and doing his thing. And it does make me feel like, okay, from a storyline point of view, we've done this massive arc this season. We're going to go back to basics. We're going to do this kind of like how seasons 1 and parts of season 2 was, where you episode by episode you'd be in different places and kind of having different adventures. So I like that that's been set up here. And I do like that there's kind of like a little home for them both as well at the end. I do have to agree. I thought the very last shot did take me out just because of that. And I know at the end of all Star Wars films, you will have the circular wipe that goes into the credits, and that's normal. But for it to go as it did, I mean, it was like, what are we doing here? What Tom and Jerry skit is this? But I mean, had it not been Grogu with the frog, I think it would have been weirder. But because it's that and it's so cute anyway, I can let it go. It doesn't ruin everything. I'm like, we're not being toxic like that. But but it's a strange choice. I wouldn't have chosen that. I would have just done normal.
Irised out, yeah. As always, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I'm very happy with the way it wraps up and for what it could potentially lead to before we get to probably heavier stuff down the line.
I'm not gonna lie, the actual Iris focusing in part is what made it feel more like a season wrap than a series wrap. Series wrap than a season wrap for me. It because that does feel very like a finale shot in a way of here's the story, here's what's happened, done. As much as the rest of it did. And I know George is not happy because IG-11 down. Going to be back because I know he's not a huge fan, but I like it. I like he's back because IG-11 is cool. I love the fact that Din was like, I don't want much, but I need that head. Just give me that. Everything be grand. I like it or not. I like it wrapped up though. But to me, I agree with you, Dave, to a point. But it's very much we've now concluded their arc. However, the next step, which will then lead into the film, is very much the group effort. It's now, okay, Ahsoka's now going to tee up to go find Grand Admiral Thrawn. Admiral Thrawn's then going to put his plan into place. We've then got more Mando, probably more Ahsoka, probably more something else. We don't know everything just yet. They were going to have Rangers of the New Republic, and that's been shelved for now, but they can always bring that back, but then focusing on other characters instead, maybe with Zeb and things. So there's plenty they can do, but it's very much the singular journey has now been completed. The group journey now begins. That's kind of my feeling towards it. It's very much, we have now completed one arc. Now, we have then picking up with Ahsoka, because one thing I didn't like about season 2 is very much the duality of both Bo and Ahsoka having literally the same conversation 2 episodes apart from where is so-and-so with a knife to the throat. It was literally the exact same scene done twice. But it needed to happen to be able to, for the backdoor pilot for Ahsoka, set it all up. That's fine. Now, as I said, the singular story is ended. The group story can begin. I don't think we're going to get any more of Book of Boba Fett, but Boba Fett will appear. That's my feeling on that. Same thing with Fennec Shan. I think she'll come back at some point. It's now teeing up for Heirs to the Empire. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what that brings. And yeah, I agree with both your points. I agree it felt more like a series finale than a season finale, but I also agree that it does tie up neatly the singular arc and it then carries forward. So a bit of both, and I agree. I have, this episode, I've been honest. There's a few things I didn't like, but doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it as a whole, and also didn't. I loved how it all ended, and I felt, though it kind of. It almost that ends those last couple ending scenes. Like, okay, it's kind of dragging a little bit, and I did think we might get Thrawn, and I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad there wasn't an end credit scene because it would have cheapened it. It was a case of here's your nice bow, done. Ahsoka, that's where you're going to meet Thrawn. That's what's going to come next. And I'm glad. I was searching for it. I was like, oh, it's ended. I thought there could have been more. Searching for it, didn't find one. I'm glad because I think that this is the Mandalorian. Ahsoka's going to be Ahsoka. You're going to have Thrawn. We're going to have Heir to the Empire. We've got so much to come. You didn't need to shoehorn it onto the end of this. So as much as I was looking for it, because I was like, okay, maybe they have done. I'm glad they didn't.
I was just going to actually ask that as my final question before we start getting your sort of thoughts on the series as an overall. I was expecting us to get a flash either before that final shot or just after it irised off, that we were going to get not maybe Thrawn, because they are going to save him for Ahsoka. I did think that was going to be too big a reveal for this show, and it didn't really tie in other than that one Ahsoka episode we had where he was mentioned, and obviously in the start of the last one, I thought we might get some more maybe hooks. I thought we might get some more of that council, maybe just discussing. So you kind of got that feeling of a continuation of some threat to still be around rather than just tied up and everything's finished. So I don't know how you felt, Sam, if you felt there would be a final scene after that there would have been something from the Empire side.
I kind of had a presumption that would happen, and I think that's one of the reasons why I did hang around, because I was like, I mean, at least to have recognition of Gideon's demise and just kind of say, right, well, we're at a dead end here with that, but we're still working on other stuff, and this is happening. And I guess, I feel like that would be, I don't think it would take you out so much to take you out of this kind of, setup that has happened with this finale. I do think, it does wrap up these 3 seasons very nicely, but again, everyone knows that this thing is coming up, so it's not like people are going into this thinking, oh yeah, well, this is the end. Like, the people are very much aware of what's coming, how this is going to link in with the Ahsoka TV show and the later film and whatnot. So yeah, maybe very slightly disappointed that there's not. However, we know we're going to see stuff anyway, so it's not like I needed to see stuff right now. Like, it's really not a big deal. There's a thing I don't want to be too greedy. Ahsoka's not too far away either. It's only a few months away. So, and we know we're going to probably get a lot of stuff in that. So I'm not too bothered.
Yeah, I've already kind of given my thoughts on it. There's not really much to add apart from the fact that I think this is probably Rick Famuyiwa's crowning moment for The Mandalorian and his work so far. The only thing is that I would like to have seen Zeb in the bar. That would have been cool, because it seems Zeb is always a good thing. But apart from that, like, come on. On the whole, this has been a cracking season, and it was a very, very good finale. And it's up there. For me, this is the best season so far.
I don't know. It's a hard to kind of place. I was going in that sort of where I'd rank it. I've really enjoyed this season again. It's not lost any of its luster for me. The Mandalorian story, I enjoyed the Bo-Katan side of it. I thought the finale 2 episodes were excellent, especially maybe last week's for me trumped at the very top of the level I think Mandalorian's ever hit, which was incredible. But I thought this one followed up very well. It was still a really entertaining, really enjoyable episode. And I say it tied up the whole series from episode 1 to this chapter 24 into a lovely, neat storyline. You could lop that off now and go, right, that's all locked and done, and now we move on, I guess, from that. So I've really, really enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to seeing what the future brings with this character and to see where we're going to go next. So it's left the doors open for everything to kind of continue. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this actual season itself as well.
I've enjoyed it too. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I know I've seen, a lot of people have been more vocal about how this season is not as good. And, some have said it's significantly weaker than the other 2, which I don't agree with. However, for me, I do think it's my least favorite of the season so far. Maybe I will need to rewatch all of them again, because it now feels like so long since the first season.
Yeah.
So I really do I do want to go back. For me, I found it very difficult to get into this season. I'm not too sure why, but I was playing catch up for like half of the season, and it's like I watched episode 6 in the queue at Celebration, You know, I was really like, I wasn't watching it as it came out. And I don't know why that is. And it wasn't like I wasn't enjoying the episodes, but I feel like, you know, when I was watching season one and two, I was really kind of like, I need to watch this, you know, straight away. I still feel like season two is probably my favorite, but I mean, I was even saying the weaker episodes of this season were still very good episodes of television, you know, better than a lot of stuff that's out there. So, I mean, me saying that season three is probably my least favorite at this point, isn't saying much because I really enjoyed it. And the fact that it ended, you know, on such a high, for me, it was just brilliant. And I again reiterate that I think the last episode 7, was kind of the best episode of, you know, the entire series thus far. With maybe the season 2 finale being like my next favorite after that. But I mean, we've had a great show for these 3 seasons, and I'm hoping that that's just going to continue and that it's going to culminate in a fantastic film. But I really enjoy these characters, and I will be sad when eventually they are not going to be on our screens every year.
Yeah, I mean, for me, going from Chapter 22, which was the worst episode ever made of The Mandalorian, to the greatest 2 they've ever done in the finales. I mean, you take that one episode out, I think this has been the best season so far, but that's my personal opinion. And as you say, Sam, even the worst episode is still cracking TV. And, like, I have my opinions on Chapter 22, and that's only because, well, especially considering how good the previous 2 were, I think you had to have that break. I get it, but that's just where I land on that. The rest of it is so well done, and I have to, you know, my hats off to them for this season. It's been cracking. I think it is just testament to how well it's done. I remember we were sat there 4 years ago, before it came out, going, "This is new ground. This is not. We've not had this before. How is this going to be?" To now sit here 3 seasons into Mandalorian and/or Obi-Wan Kenobi with so much on the horizon, going, they have just nailed Star Wars on TV. They just nailed live action Star Wars. It has been one thing after another without too much that's been a downer. It's been pretty much home runs from the start because they've put heart, soul, and actual care into it rather than pumping out sake. I mean, you look at season 8 of Game of Thrones, for example. Now, I enjoyed it, but only to a point. I mean, the opening was great, and then the ending was meh. And I was a Stark fan from the beginning, so of course I have my moments, but it was just, in comparison, it was poor. Whereas this has been season after season after season, the 3 years, and you can look back on these first 3 seasons and go, holy hell. And I think they've nailed it with Star Wars. The one thing that British TV always has over American TV, in my humble opinion, is the fact that British TV ends too soon, Americans end too late. A lot of seasons go on that little bit too long. They start repeating themselves or doing something new they don't need to do. They could have wrapped up a few earlier. A lot of the British stuff ends up being, well, we've only had 4 series of this. Where's the rest of it? Or, you know, like Fawlty Towers, like, here you go, here's one and done kind of thing. It's okay, so, we thought there was more than this. No, you've only got this. They like to leave it a little bit too less rather than too much. And this has been, those first 3 seasons has been absolutely fantastic. So for me to wrap it all up and to look forward to what's coming next, yes, bring on Ahsoka, bring on the film. And for everything apart from the Book of Boba Fett to be this great, I'm loving it.
And I think with that, we will bring this to an end. As always, we do want to hear your comments. So if you've been watching this along live or you're watching it in the future, please drop your comments in. We will come to all your comments and answer those. If you've got any questions or thoughts on that you want answers to and want us to have our opinion on your opinion, then we will quite happily give that because we're just opinionated kind of guys. Obviously, that ends The Mandalorian for this series. There's a lot of Star Wars still to come. As I say, we've just said there, we've got Ahsoka coming in August, and who knows what else is going to be coming up on the channel. The best way to find any of that is Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy. You have got Facebook and Letterboxd at Cinema Savvy, and there's a Redbubble description in the link below if you did want to pick up any lovely Cinema Savvy merch, which will help towards the channel. But for now, I just want to say a massive, massive thank you to George for letting me come on and take over running this badly from the start, but it's gone really well since then. It took a real up curve, so it's been really
That's right.
good.
Sam and I saved you. That's how this works.
Yeah, absolutely. You did, as always with you two lovely gentlemen, and it's been a pleasure talking to you about this episode. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, Phill, for being here tonight. Again, there will be lots more Star Wars on the horizon, lots more coming on the Cinema Savvy channel in terms of reviews and looking at Blu-rays and all of that good stuff. George will be back to give you all the information, I'm sure. But until next time, see you all later.
See you.